Welcome to Radio Public Library and Primary Care Network co-sponsored program, House Café. Today, our House Café program is about journeying through grief. Please welcome two presenters, Liz, registered social worker and mental health counselor, and Carol, registered nurse, both from Primary Care Network. Carol is our first speaker.
Hello, and welcome to the presentation. Thank you for that introduction. My background, as she said, is a registered nurse. I've worked at the Primary Care Network for a number of years. I was a program manager, and I'm now doing some facilitation of our group presentations. And this one, Journeying Through Grief, is one of the ones that I do present as an 8-week program. So today we want to give you an opportunity to learn about the program, learn a bit about grief, loss, and mourning, and look at a few tools and skills that are taught in the group. And who is the group for? So anyone grieving the loss of a loved one who has passed away. There's no time requirement since the loss. It could be fairly recent, or it may have been a number of years ago and just still struggling with that grief and not getting some resolution. So the small group, it's a small group of about 8 people, and it meets 2 hours once a week for 8 weeks. So during COVID, those have all been on Zoom. Once we're able to, we will have those in person again at the PCN office. And this is offered provincially, so it's offered in different formats within different PCNs around the province. There is a screening process to determine group readiness and that you will fit into the group. So Journeying Through Grief group is set up with every week we cover 3 different sections. So the first section is around understanding your grief journey. And then we talk about some self-expression of your grief. And then there's a portion around active healing. So also each week we do a check-in, a check-out, and we do a mindfulness meditation at the very end called 5 minutes off. And there's always a bit of homework to do, some things that we want you to continue in just kind of exploring around your grief and moving, how are you able to move forward from there. So the metaphor that we use is around grief as a mountain climb. A mountain, as you climb up a mountain, you have some ups and downs. It's not always a straight journey to the top. So we look at where you are on the mountain at the beginning of class and then again at the end of class. So how to journey through grief? Participants will develop a toolkit that will help them to understand themselves better. They explore and express their grief, and then during class engage in exercises to deepen their healing and to reinvest in life. And those are all part of the homework that you would be working on between classes. And so there is a difference between loss, grief, and mourning. So what is that difference? Loss is the process of losing something or someone that we are attached or connected to. Grief is the internal thoughts, feelings that accompany a loss, and mourning is expressing that grief outwardly. So lots of different cultures express their mourning in different ways. And now Liz will take over from this point to just explore a little bit more.
Thanks, Carol. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit more about the grief process, looking at some basic kind of overview information. And then we're going to end the conversation today by looking at some self-care and giving you all an opportunity to experience that 5-minute off that Carol mentioned at the beginning. So the grief process, I'm just going to actually read out this quote by Dr. Warden, who says, "Grief is work, a back and forth process. It's about getting lost in the woods, rewalking the same path many times before a new trail opens up. We all move through our grief process in our own way and at our own pace." So what I like about this quote is that it really highlights the fact that grief is not a linear process. It's wild, and it can feel chaotic at times, a little bit like a pinball machine, perhaps. And so there's no prescriptive formula that we can give you that would dictate, if you start at step 1 and just follow these 5 steps, that your grief journey will be done. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And there's no timeline. The other thing he talks about is that idea of maybe rewalking the same path over and over. So at times it might feel like you're spinning your wheels. You know, you're walking and walking, you're climbing that mountain, but it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, that you're really not moving. It might even feel like at times you're stuck in the mud, stuck in that muck, before something shifts and then you can find your footing again. So that's one of the things I feel has really been beneficial about this program, is that not only do you have an opportunity to process and explore your own grief, but we also provide some ideas around how to get unstuck, how you can find your footing again. So that idea of mourning. So mourning is that outward expression of our grief, and that really is our way out. It's also important to know that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. There's just your way. So your way is the right way. It's the right way for you. So it's highly individualized and it varies from person to person. So we often say in the group as well that just to be cautious about comparing ourselves and our grief to that of others. So for example, Carol and I could maybe lose the same person in our life might pass, but our experiences of that grief may be very different and look different, and that's okay. And I think as humans, we have a tendency to kind of compare ourselves to others as a way to gauge kind of how we're doing. So just to be cautious about that and to show yourself some kindness and compassion as you move through your own journey. Hope that makes sense. So on this next slide, we talk about healing needs. So the 6 needs of mourning. So really these provide the backbone, I guess the foundation for the program. So although there are 8 weeks that make up the program, out of the 8 weeks, 6 of those weeks are dedicated to each of these needs. So acknowledging the reality of the death, embracing the pain of that loss, remembering the person who's passed, developing a new self-identity, that search for meaning, and receiving ongoing support. So we will talk about each of these needs more in depth through the program, and again, also giving some ideas around how you can meet these needs. So once we acknowledge our needs, we can then become mourners, so finding ways to express those needs, meeting those needs, and moving towards healing. So these next 3 slides, we're going to talk a little bit more about the phases of grief. So again, these are not necessarily steps for grief that we take, but phases of grief that encompasses a lot of different information and tasks for us to accomplish. And we can also be in more than one of these phases at a time. So we may move in and out of them, and just to know that that's normal. It's not a sign that you're, regressing or moving backwards by any means. It's just the nature of grief. So the first we're going to look at is facing the reality of the loss. So this is often accompanied by a sense of shock that disbelief, that numbness that can happen. So just feeling like a void of emotion. You may hope that there's been a mistake, that this news isn't true, right? This is just a bad dream, and I need to wake up. Hope that life will go on as before. And it's really common to also feel anxiety and panic, perhaps about your future as well as other things. So we first acknowledge the reality of the loss with our head, and then over time with our heart. So you may notice, for those of you who are going through this, that your head and heart are not on the same page. There's a bit of a disconnect there. And so, like I said, this can take time. An example might be, it's 5 o'clock on a Tuesday evening and you hear a car pull into the drive. And for that split second, you may think, you know, my loved one has returned from work, as he or she always has, only for seconds later to realize that that isn't the case, right? That longing for this to not be true, for that person to return to our lives. It's also normal to want to push away from the reality. So that's quite, that can be quite a real thing for a lot of people, because this is a really difficult task to face the reality and to integrate that into our lives. So if you find yourself pushing away, again, just know that that's normal, and that's not uncommon for sure. And over time, you will find ways to integrate the reality into your life when it's right for you. So this can be something that can take weeks or even months for this to fully, to kind of fully face that reality of what's happened and what that means for you. The next phase we're going to talk about, this is a really big one as well, carries a lot of weight, is that experiencing the pain of the loss. So in this phase, we look at the emotional and physical distress that accompanies grief. You may experience sleep problems, maybe having difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, maybe sleeping too much. You may feel various aches and pains, maybe some that are new to you that weren't there prior. You may experience intense emotions. So it may feel like those emotions are really raw and they hit us in a really strong way. So anger, guilt, sadness, these are just some of the really common emotions that participants often share with us. And they don't feel good, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. Pain and distress may be there. That's similar to a roller coaster. So what that means is that you may feel like you're on a ride you can't get off of. So lots of ups and downs, twists and turns. It can feel a little bit like chaos perhaps, and maybe a little bit like you're going crazy. Sometimes we hear that from our participants. Also during this phase, we have this task of searching for meaning and identity. So that idea of a new normal, which is unavoidable. This is something that we all must go through. So that search for meaning, life after a loss will never be the same. We are forever changed in some way, shape, or form. And depending upon our relationship with the person who's passed, that may be a bigger shift as opposed to a smaller one. And so it's really common and normal to have a lot of questions come up. So maybe, why did this happen? You may start to question religious beliefs, life philosophies, things like that. That idea of who am I now and what does this mean for me? So again, this is something that is unavoidable, but can take time. The task in this phase is to feel the pain, embracing really strong, powerful emotions, especially those that are painful, maybe some that we would label as even negative, is not something that we naturally do. So as humans, it kind of goes against our instincts to want to embrace the things that hurt us, right? That don't feel good. We have a tendency to want to push away from those things, maybe avoid them, distract ourselves from them. If we do that, what happens is we can maybe prolong our grief journey. Okay, so the task is to, instead of pushing away from our emotions, to find ways to turn towards them. So if you're kind of, you're hiking on that mountain, or you're in that wilderness of grief, and you come across a bear, instead of fighting the bear off, as you might want to do with anxiety, the challenge is to befriend the bear, so to speak. Sometimes what we hear from past participants is that if I embrace this pain that I'm feeling, it's so heavy and it hurts so much that I will be completely overwhelmed, and that could be destructive to me. What if I start crying and I never stop? So again, those fears are real. One of the things that we do talk about in our program, we talk about some of those thoughts and those feelings, and then giving you some ways that you can slowly start to turn towards your pain, embrace your grief in a way that feels more manageable to you, so that it's not so overwhelming. And then when we do that, that's what really helps us to start to heal. The last phase that we talk about is reinvesting in life. So this is the emotional and physical reactions that we've been experiencing through our journey have reduced in intensity and frequency. So if you think of it a little bit like on a dial, so to speak, when that grief, that loss initially happens, emotions, our reactions are really, really raw and intense. And so that dial is turned right up to, 100, right? Over time, as we journey through our grief and we meet our needs of mourners, we find ways to express our grief and move towards healing, that dial will start to come down. So this doesn't mean that, we'll get to a place where we won't have grief at all. It's, you still might have times where something unexpected triggers a grief burst. So triggers a grief reaction, but this may happen less frequently. And when it does happen, those reactions will likely be reduced. So during the reinvesting in life, we also have been able to connect to our loss in a new way. So although that person that that's left us, that has passed away, is no longer physically present in our life, we have found ways to establish a different relationship with them and incorporate them into our lives in a way that honors their memory, and a way that we can carry them forward in our hearts and our minds in our life without them being physically present. Energy that was previously used for our grief is now available to be invested in hope for the future. So we now have this energy and this time to maybe do the things that we want to do, as well as the things that we need to do. So I'm just going to pause there for a quick second, and I'm just going to check the chat box. If you did have any questions around any of this information so far, feel free to just put it into the chat, and we'll try to get to that. Certainly there'll be time at the end. So I hope this kind of makes sense. Again, we go more in depth in our program. This is just a basic overview today for you. So self-care. So it might not be a surprise that part of our grief talk today would incorporate some focus on self-care. So why is this important? It's important because, as we saw earlier with Warden's quote, that grief is work, and it's hard work. It's heart-heavy work. It's draining, it takes time. And so it's really important that in order to prepare us to continue on our journey through grief, that we have strategies, we have a self-care ideas that we can draw upon to help us to refuel for that journey. So even to stop and think of for a minute, reflect on yourself, for yourself. What are the things that you are currently doing to take care of you? What are the things that nurture you, that provide comfort? What are the things that you do to help energize? We've included some ideas here. So some of them might be a little bit different when we think about self-care. You know, some things that easily come to mind are getting your hair done or your nails painted or going for a massage, which are all great. But even things like acknowledging your emotions. So tuning in, how am I feeling? What emotions are here for me? And being able to label those for yourself. Accepting that grief may come with emotions that you didn't expect to experience. There may be times where certain feelings come up and they may be a surprise to you. So labeling your emotions is a form of self-care. Expressing your grief in a way that feels right to you. So again, everyone is different. So what might that look like? Perhaps it's journaling. If you enjoy writing, journaling might be a way to help you express your grief. It could be dance or music. It could be just being with loved ones, right? Your support system. So whatever feels right to you, that's okay. That's self-care. Seeking out support and staying connected. And I know this has been a little bit maybe difficult just with COVID, but there are ways we can do this. So just thinking about your support system, who does that include? Who do you have in your life that is there for you, that you can talk to? Who can you openly share with? The other piece of this is to consider, you know, what specifically do I need from my support system, from my support people, and to ask for that. So this is kind of a win-win situation. Not only will it be helpful for you because you'll be able to get your needs met, but it will also be helpful for the person providing the support to you. It gives them some direction. I think sometimes what can happen, especially after loss, is that different assumptions can be made. So you as the griever may feel like my support system should know what I need, right? They should know what I need and be able to provide that. But that might not be the case. So what is it that specifically that you need, and how can you get those needs met? Consider exercise or some type of mobility, movement. So is that stretching? Is it going for a walk, a run, whatever that looks like, but to get up and move? There is a strong mind-body connection, and exercise can help move various emotions throughout our body, helps us to work out stress. And so there can be a positive impact on mind, body, and spirit when we start to move. Consider soothing activities. So what is it that you do for relaxation? Maybe it's a meditation that you do. Are you connecting to nature, spending time outdoors? So research has shown that that can have really positive benefits and naturally reduce stress when we're out in nature, specifically around green spaces. Meeting basic needs. Are you eating? How are you taking care of that? Are you eating meals or trying to get some food in? What does rest look like? Showering, what are your hygiene practices looking like? Sleep, etc. At first, especially when we first experience that loss and we're in the rawness or that wilderness of grief, taking care of our basic needs is enough. In fact, that can even be challenging. It may become a primary focus. The last thing we have listed here is rituals. So what I mean by rituals, so rituals, they are a meaningful activity that gives symbolic expression to our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So self-care, is there a ritual that you engage in? So it could be having a bubble bath. Maybe you do that nightly. It could be lighting a candle in memory of the people that have passed, right? Your loved ones. It could be talking to them, putting out pictures. It can take many different shapes and forms, but something to consider. So I would be curious, what are some of the things that you are doing to take care of yourself? And is this an area that maybe needs more attention? Only you'll know that. I'm just gonna go to the chat really quick. No question, okay. Something that I realized we didn't put in this PowerPoint, but if you were interested to learn more about self-care or to get more ideas around that, if you go onto Google and just type in self-care wheel and go to images, there's a number of different great diagrams. There's one that we use in our program. I think it's Olga.ca, something like that. It's a self-care wheel, and she's got self-care broken down into different sections. So physical, emotional, spiritual, so different kind of spokes come off that wheel, and in each of those sections she has a list of ideas on how you can meet some of the self-care needs. So if you feel like you are lacking in some of these things, that would be a good thing to investigate. The other thing with self-care is even thinking about what has helped you in the past. So although I can't maybe see who's joining us right now, I'm going to take a stab at the dark and guess that you weren't born yesterday, that you probably all come from, you know, life experience. You've had many ups and downs. So even reflecting on when times were tough in the past, what's helped me to get through that? What are the things that I did? Who was around me? What were my attitudes and beliefs like? And is there something that was helpful in the past that you could bring forward to help yourself now in the present moment? And then lastly, oops. Thank you, Carol. So the self-care wheel is www.olgaphoenix.com. It's a great resource. We use it in our grief program and we refer to it quite a lot. Self-care is a common thread throughout the 8 weeks. Right. So what I would invite you to do now, if you're able, I'm not sure where you are joining from or what you're doing, but if it is at all possible, I would invite you to put down whatever you're holding. There's something in your hand, to get comfortable. And we're going to experience the 5-minute off mindfulness meditation that's part of our program. So it's a nice way, after we've done a lot of processing, we've done maybe some crying, to take care of ourselves before we kind of send you off into the world again. So just to take a quick second, maybe also just to tune in and pay attention to what's happening for you right now. What thoughts are there? What it feels like in your body. And I'm just gonna play this for us.
It's now time to take 5 minutes off. Make sure you are sitting or lying comfortably and that you will not be disturbed. Imagine you're lying in the soft grass of a beautiful meadow. It is very peaceful here, and you've got all the time in the world. Feel the grass around your body and how the sun warms you. Feel how your body rests on the surface. Let go of all tension. Just be here now. Start to notice your breathing. Notice how the air goes in and out of your body as you breathe. Observe which parts of your body rise and fall with your breathing. Feel how good the air is for you. Most of us usually take breathing for granted, but if you're aware of it, you'll notice that every breath is really refreshing for your body, like drinking fresh, cold water when you're really thirsty. Breathing is precious, like you are, like life is, if we take time to notice. As you lie here in the grass, staring at the blue sky and the drifting clouds, there is nothing you have to do. Right now you are at the right place at the right time, and it's perfectly okay just to be here, just to relax, just to feel your breathing and let go of everything else. Notice your breathing again. Feel how it fills you up with fresh energy as you breathe in, and how old, stressful energy is being washed out of you each time you breathe out. Breathe like this for a while. That is all for now. You can now, at your own pace, slowly return to where you were before this 5-minute break. I wish you a great day.
So hopefully you were able to hear that okay. So maybe just take a minute to reflect on what that was like for you. What did you notice after? So this is found, you can find this this meditation on YouTube. It was Peaceful Pause or peacefulpause.com. So just wondering if there were any questions from the people joining us today that we could answer, anything that maybe would be helpful to know more about, that we could clarify? So something else important to know would be, how do you get connected? So for more information, you can contact your local PCN or go to albertafindadoc.ca. Oh, thank you. So albertafindadoc.ca. So there's more actually on that website. You'll be able to find more information under the workshops and programs tab as to what workshops are being offered and where, and how you can join that. If you are in the Red Deer area, you can contact the Red Deer PCN. So we have a website and phone number. So our website, maybe we can put that in the chat. Carol, if you wouldn't mind that. It's www.reddeerpcn.com. Thank you. So you can feel free to check out our website, and there will be more information about the program and how to get yourself connected. Anything to add, Carol?
Just that we recognize that grief is hard work, and that you do need to really manage your self-care, look after yourself. The other thing that we do talk about quite a bit in our groups is the Mourner Bill of Rights. That's another link that we should probably add on here too, Liz, is that Mourner Bill of Rights. I've found in the groups that I've facilitated that people really appreciate that, and they share it with their family, just so that their family can recognize where they're at a little bit and be a bit more supportive for them if they're really struggling.